worked security at a museum for 6 months before I quit without giving notice. The job was supposed to be easy. Walk the floors at night, make sure nobody broke in, check that the climate controls were working properly. The museum was small, a local history place in a mid-sized Midwestern town. 3 floors, maybe 20 rooms total. I worked the overnight shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 5 nights a week. Most nights I was alone, except for Jenkins, the maintenance guy who came in around 2 a.m. to do repairs. The museum had cameras, but they were old, and half of them didn't work. My supervisor said they were waiting on budget approval to replace them. Until then, I had to do physical rounds every hour. The building was from the 1920s, all wood floors and high ceilings. During the day, it was charming. At night, every footstep echoed. My first week was uneventful. I'd walk my route, check the doors, sit in the security office between rounds. The office had a small TV and a coffee maker. I brought books. It was boring, but fine. Week 2, things started feeling off. I was doing my 2 a.m. round when I noticed one of the display cases in the Pioneer room was open. Not broken into, just open. The glass door swung on its hinges. Inside the case were farming tools from the 1800s, a sickle, some kind of hand plow, wooden handles worn smooth from use. Nothing was missing. The artifacts were all there, arranged exactly as they should be. I closed the case and locked it, made a note in my log. The next night, same thing. Same case, standing open. I mentioned it to my supervisor. He said the lock was probably faulty and he'd get maintenance to look at it. Jenkins came by that night and tightened the latch, said it should hold now. The next night, it was open again. This time, I stood there staring at it for a full minute before closing it. The case was in the middle of the room, nowhere near any vents or windows. There was no draft, no reason for it to pop open on its own. I started checking that case first on every round. Sometimes it was closed, sometimes it was open. On my 3rd week, I found something else. I was walking through the Civil War exhibit when I heard footsteps above me. Not heavy, just regular footsteps. Someone walking across the 3rd floor. I stopped and listened. The footsteps continued, steady and unhurried. I radioed Jenkins. He was in the basement working on a boiler. Nobody else was in the building. I went upstairs. The 3rd floor housed the textile collection. Old dresses, quilts, that sort of thing. The lights were on timers and they'd already shut off for the night. I used my flashlight. The room was empty. Mannequins in period clothing stood in display cases, their faces blank and pale. I checked every corner, every closet. Nothing. The footsteps had stopped. I went back downstairs and finished my round. Told myself it was the old building settling, pipes expanding, whatever. But I heard them again the next night, and the night after that. Always around 2:30 a.m., always on the 3rd floor. Jenkins heard them too. He was upstairs fixing a light fixture one night when they started. He came down white-faced and said he was done working on the 3rd floor after midnight. I didn't blame him. Week 4, I started seeing her. I was walking past the Pioneer room when I caught movement in my peripheral vision. I turned and saw a woman standing near the open display case. She wore a long dress, something from the 1800s. Her hair was pinned up. She was bent over the case, looking at the tools inside. I called out, "Excuse me, the museum is closed." She didn't respond, didn't even look up. I walked toward her. "Ma'am, you need to leave." She straightened up slowly. When she turned to face me, I stopped walking. Her face was wrong. The features were there, eyes, nose, mouth, but they didn't quite line up, like someone had drawn a face from memory and gotten the proportions off. She looked at me for a long moment, then she smiled. I backed out of the room and radioed my supervisor. He said he'd come in. By the time he arrived, 20 minutes later, she was gone. The display case was closed and locked. He asked me if I'd been drinking. I said no. He told me to take the rest of the night off. I came back the next night because I needed the money, but I stayed in the security office. I didn't do my rounds. Around 2:30 a.m., I heard the footsteps. They came down from the third floor, crossed the second floor, and stopped right outside the security office door. I stared at the door. The handle didn't move. Nobody knocked, but I could hear breathing, slow and steady, right on the other side of the door. I sat there until 6 a.m. without moving. When daylight came and the door supervisor arrived, the breathing stopped. I walked out and never went back. My supervisor called me 3 times. I didn't answer. 2 weeks later, I drove past the museum. There was a position available in the window. They were looking for a new night security guard. I kept driving. I worked as a medical courier for about a year, transporting lab specimens between hospitals and testing facilities. Most of the job was straightforward. Pick up samples, drive them to the lab, drop them off. The specimens were in sealed containers inside insulated bags. You weren't supposed to open them or even look at them too closely. I worked the late shift, 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., covering the evening and overnight pickups. A lot of the specimens were time-sensitive, blood cultures, biopsies, things that needed to be processed quickly. The company gave me a van with a medical decal on the side and a GPS unit that tracked my routes. I had a rotating list of pickup locations, maybe 15 hospitals and clinics in a 50-mile radius. 3 months in, I got assigned a new pickup location, St. Catherine's Medical Center, an old hospital on the east side of the city. It was scheduled for demolition in 6 months. They'd built a new facility across town and most of the departments had already moved. But the morgue was still operational. They used it as overflow when the new hospital's morgue was full. My pickup there was always the same. 11 p.m., rear entrance, 3rd floor. A pathologist named Dr. Reeves would meet me with a single insulated container. The first night I went, Dr. Reeves was waiting by the elevator when I arrived. He was older, maybe late 60s, with gray hair and thick glasses. He didn't say much, just handed me the container and signed the transfer form. I asked what was in it. He said tissue samples and walked away. The second pickup was the same. He was waiting by the elevator, container in hand, no conversation. The third time, he wasn't there. I waited by the elevator for 10 minutes, called the dispatch number on my form. The woman who answered said she'd try to reach Dr. Reeves. While I waited, I looked around. The 3rd floor was mostly dark. Most of the lights had been turned off to save power since the building was being phased out. The hallways stretched in both directions, doors closed, everything quiet. Then I heard a phone ringing, faint, coming from somewhere down the hall. It rang 6 times and stopped. A minute later, it started again. I walked toward the sound. The hallway ended at a set of double doors marked Pathology, Authorized Personnel Only. The phone was ringing inside. I pushed through the doors. The room beyond was dim, lit only by emergency exit signs. Stainless steel tables, cabinets full of instruments, a wall of refrigerated drawers. The phone sat on a desk in the corner. It rang again. I picked it up. Hello? Silence. This is the medical courier. I'm here for the pickup. Static. Then a voice, distant and muffled. 3rd drawer, left side. The line went dead. I looked at the wall of refrigerated drawers. There were maybe 20 of them, arranged in a grid. 3rd drawer, left side. I walked over and pulled the handle. Cold air rolled out. Inside was a body bag on a metal tray. The bag was zipped closed. I stood there for a long moment. This wasn't my job. I was supposed to pick up containers from Dr. Reeves, not retrieve bodies. I was about to close the drawer when I noticed something. The body bag was moving. Not a lot, just a slight rise and fall, like breathing. I stepped back. The drawer was still open, cold air pouring out. The movement stopped. I closed the drawer and left. I didn't wait for Dr. Reeves. I drove straight back to the office and told them I wasn't returning to St. Catherine's. My supervisor said that was fine. They were taking the hospital off the route anyway. Dr. Reeves had died 2 weeks ago. heart attack at his desk. Nobody had told me. I asked who I'd been picking up specimens from. My supervisor pulled up the transfer forms. Every signature said Dr. Reeves. I quit the next day. But sometimes late at night, I still think about that phone call, that voice telling me which drawer to open. I never found out what was supposed to be in that container I was meant to pick up. I'm glad I didn't. I did telemarketing for 3 months when I was 21. It was a terrible job, exactly as awful as you'd imagine. Cold calling people during dinner, reading scripts, getting hung up on constantly. The pay was minimum wage plus commission, but nobody ever made commission. The office was in a strip mall between a pawn shop and a dollar store. 20 cubicles, harsh fluorescent lights, a break room with a microwave that never worked. I worked the evening shift, 4 p.m. to midnight. Most of the other workers were like me, young, broke, desperate. We'd make calls for 8 hours straight, taking a 15-minute break every 2 hours. The calls were automated. The system would dial numbers from a database and connect us when someone answered. We'd get maybe 2 seconds of warning before the call connected, just enough time to see the name and phone number on our screen. About 6 weeks in, I started getting strange calls. The system would connect me to someone, but when I started my script, there'd be no response, just silence, not even breathing. I'd say, "Hello?" a few times, then hang up and move to the next call. This happened a lot in telemarketing. People would answer, realize it was a sales call, and just set the phone down. No big deal. But these calls felt different. The silence wasn't empty. It felt full, if that makes sense. Like someone was definitely there, listening intently, but choosing not to speak. After a week of this, I started recognizing the number. Same area code, same prefix, but the last 4 digits were always different. Close, but not identical. Like someone was calling from different extensions in the same building. The name on the screen was always the same though, Whitmore, J. I mentioned it to my supervisor. He pulled up the account and said J. Whitmore had been on our call list for months. Multiple numbers associated with the name, all marked as no answer or disconnected. He said to keep trying. Sometimes people changed their minds. The calls kept coming, maybe 3 or 4 times a shift. Always silence, always that heavy listening silence. Then one night, someone spoke. The call connected. I started my script. "Good evening, this is Ryan calling from..." A voice cut me off. Male, calm, speaking very clearly. "I know why you're calling." I stopped. "Oh, great. Then you know we're offering..." "I don't want what you're selling." "Okay, I understand. Can I ask why you keep..." "I didn't call you. You keep calling me." "That was true." "Right, sorry, I can remove your number from our..." "You can't remove me from anything." The line went dead. I sat there for a second, then marked the call as "Do Not Call" in the system. The next night, I got another call from a Whitmore number. This time, a different voice answered, female, elderly sounding. "Stop calling here," she said. "We don't want what you're selling." "Ma'am, I apologize. I'm removing your number right now." "It doesn't matter what you do. You'll keep calling." "I don't think that's..." "We've been getting calls for years. Different people, different companies, all of you calling the same numbers." "I'm sorry, but I don't understand." "You're not calling us. We're not real. None of these numbers are real." She hung up. I pulled up the Whitmore account on my computer. There were dozens of numbers listed, all different, all in the same area code. I called my supervisor over. He looked at the screen and frowned. "That's weird," he said. "These numbers aren't in our current database. This looks like an old import from a previous company. Should they still be getting calls? No, the system should have flagged these as inactive." He clicked through some screens. "I'll get IT to remove them." That should have been the end of it. But the next night, I got another call, a Whitmore number, a voice I hadn't heard before, young, maybe a child. "Why do you keep calling us?" "I'm not supposed to be calling you anymore. Your numbers were removed from the system." "Then why are you calling?" I looked at my screen. The call had connected through the automated system like always, but when I checked the database, there was no Whitmore account, no numbers listed. "I don't know," I said. "We want you to stop." "I will, I promise." "You can't stop. None of you can. You'll keep calling forever." The line disconnected. I quit that night. I told my supervisor I had a family emergency and walked out. 2 weeks later, I was working a new job at a warehouse. One night, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. "Hello?" Silence. That same heavy, listening silence. Then a voice. The elderly woman from before. "We told you that you couldn't stop." I hung up and blocked the number. But sometimes my phone rings late at night. Unknown numbers. Different every time. I don't answer anymore, but I know who's calling.
I worked at a 24-hour copy center for almost 2 years. The place was one of those franchise shops in a business district downtown. We did printing, copying, binding, shipping, whatever people needed. During the day, it was busy with office workers and students. At night, it was dead. I worked the overnight shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., usually alone except for the occasional customer needing last-minute copies for an early meeting. The shop had a back room where we kept the industrial printers and the paper stock. It was windowless, just fluorescent lights and the constant hum of machines. About 8 months into the job, I started finding things. Documents that had been printed but never picked up. Usually, they'd just be sitting in the output tray when I came in for my shift. Most of them were normal: resumes, flyers, business proposals. I'd hold them for a week in case someone came back, then recycle them. But some of the documents were strange. The first odd one was a missing person flyer. Black and white photo of a young woman, mid-20s. The text said she'd been missing for 3 weeks. There was a phone number to call with information. I didn't think much of it. People printed missing person flyers all the time. But when I looked at the timestamp on the printer log, the document had been printed at 3:47 a.m. I'd been in the shop the entire night. Nobody had come in. I checked the security camera footage. Nothing. The shop had been empty. The next strange document appeared 2 nights later. It was a single page with a list of names, maybe 20 names, all handwritten in shaky letters. Some of the names had dates next to them. All the dates were from the 1990s. At the bottom of the page, in different handwriting, someone had written, "Remember them." The printer log showed it had been printed at 4:13 a.m. Again, I'd been alone in the shop. I started paying closer attention to the printers. I'd check the output trays every hour during my shift.
Most nights, nothing unusual. But maybe once or twice a week I'd find something. A photo of a car accident, a handwritten letter with no signature, a child's drawing of a house on fire. All of them printed in the middle of the night, all of them with no record of who sent them. I mentioned it to my manager. He said it was probably a glitch in the network. Maybe files were being sent from old computers and printing on a delay. That made sense. I tried to stop worrying about it. Then, I found the photograph. It was a color print, high quality. The image showed the interior of our copy shop, empty, late at night, judging by the darkness visible through the front windows. In the photo, I could see someone standing behind the counter. It was me. I was looking at the camera, but my expression was wrong. Blank, emotionless, like I was staring through whoever was taking the photo. My hands were shaking when I checked the printer log. The photo had been printed 10 minutes ago, at 3:52 a.m. I looked around the shop. I was alone. The front door was locked. The security cameras showed nobody had entered. I picked up the photo and stared at it. The image was recent. I was wearing the same shirt I had on right now. But I hadn't posed for any photo. I hadn't sent anything to the printer. I crumpled it up and threw it away. The next night, another photo appeared. Same angle, same lighting, me behind the counter, same blank expression. This time I was holding something, a piece of paper. I looked closer. The paper in the photo had writing on it, but I couldn't make out the words. I checked my hands. I wasn't holding anything. I threw that photo away too. They kept coming. Every night, a new photo. Always me, always in the shop, always with that same empty expression. In each one, I was in a slightly different position, turning to face the camera, walking toward it, getting closer. The final photo appeared on my last shift. I found it in the output tray at 4 a.m. In the image, I was standing right in front of the camera, so close that my face filled the entire frame. My eyes were completely black. My mouth was open, but opened too wide, impossibly wide. On the back of the photo, someone had written in neat handwriting, "We've been waiting for you." I walked out, left everything, my keys, my employee badge, my jacket. I drove home and called my manager from my apartment, told him I quit effective immediately. He asked why. I said I had personal reasons. A week later, I drove past the copy shop. There was a help wanted sign in the window. They were looking for an overnight employee. I wondered if whoever took the job would start finding strange documents too, or if they'd find photos of themselves getting closer to the camera, night after night after night.